everyone, and welcome to another episode of Chef Talk. I'm your host, Brianna Williams, and today's episode of Chef Talk is the final installment of our self-care series. So as all of our viewers know out there, Thompson Hospitality has been celebrating Self-Care September, where in this month, we're really committed and encouraging students to honor their minds and bodies to become the best version of themselves. And so in order to do that, we really wanted to highlight some of the resources that we have available to help you maximize your self-care and as well as take care of your mental health. And so for today's episode, we have two very special guests joining us from University of Maryland, Eastern Shore, their Counseling Center. And we have Dr. Malika Johnson, who's the director of the Counseling Center over at University of Maryland, Eastern Shore, as well as Melanie Spencer, who is the mental health counselor over at the University of Maryland, Eastern Shore. So I just want to thank both of you ladies for being with us on the show today.
Thank you for having us, Brianna.
Thank you for having us.
We really are excited. And of course, we believe that this will be a lot of great information for students to have and be aware of the resources that are available to them right on campus. And so since we have a lot of ground to cover here today, let's go ahead and jump right into the discussion for today. And so to get started, we just want to take a moment to actually define what self-care is. And so my first question would be to both ladies, in terms of self-care, it's really become a buzzword in recent years. We've, heard it a lot on social media and just on the internet. And so what does self-love and self-care truly entail?
Okay. So when we're talking about self-love, we're talking about a state of appreciation for oneself that grows from actions that support our physical, psychological, and spiritual growth. Self-love means having a high regard for oneself and one's own happiness. Self-love means taking care of your own needs and not sacrificing your well-being for the state of others.
And that's really important. And one thing you mentioned, the idea of not sacrificing your state of well-being for others. I definitely think that's something important, especially for college-age students. As you get involved in a lot of things on campus, you're juggling class, your social life, or any other organizations or things that you're involved with. So being able to understand that there's a limit and to understand that your personal well-being does come first. So I love that. Okay, and so let's move ahead on to the next question here. So oftentimes the idea of self-care can be misinterpreted in a negative light. So how does self-care differ from high self-esteem or selfishness, etc.? I think that sometimes we might feel guilty, especially in a world where we're constantly on the go. Some people might feel guilty for taking time to themselves. And so how can that be misinterpreted in a negative light?
So oftentimes, Brianna, people misinterpret self-care as being selfish. And being selfish is totally different. That, when you're selfish, that's to the detriment of others. But having good self-care is about replenishing your soul, replenishing your resources. And self-care is about your whole wellness, not just your mental health, but we're looking at your physical, spiritual, emotional, and mental health. And so if we want to give to others, we can't give to others if our cup is empty, sorry. So we can only give from a full vessel. And so I just wanted to quote somebody, and Karl Lagerfeld said, "Don't sacrifice yourself too much, because if you do sacrifice yourself too much, there's nothing else you can give." So self-care is really about one pouring into you first, and then you can take care of everything else.
That's great. I love what you said. And, that's something that we want to encourage, even not just for students, any of our viewers out there watching, we really want you to take time this month to really reflect on how you do practice self-care in your personal life, what thing, and that can be physically, whether it's something that you eat, whether it's different activities that you do. I really want you to take some time to self-reflect and think about ways that you can implement some more self-care practices in your day-to-day life. So that's really great. And so before we move on to the next topic, I did want to ask as well, for those who might not give it too much thought, what are the first steps students can take to intentionally begin their self-care journey?
Yes. Okay. So the very first thing we would suggest, in no particular order, but taking time to rest, getting the appropriate amount of sleep is so important, whether you're a 7-hour, an 8-hour, or a 9-hour, it really depends. But just making sure that you know your body and you know the amount of sleep that you need to get in order to be able to be functional. Next, we would say exercising. Just getting out, moving your body, moving your muscles, whether it's yoga or something a little bit more rigorous, like running or lifting weights, whatever it is that's getting the body moving and the blood flowing. Looking at your eating habits, what you are putting into your body directly affects how you feel. If you have a high sugar, high caffeine intake, you're not going to feel as great as maybe you would if you were drinking the appropriate amount of water. And then also minimizing substance usage. We see a lot of substance usage on campus. That's not always the best for a clear mind and a clear body.
Yeah, those are all excellent tips. And a few things I wanted to touch on, especially from a campus dining perspective. One of the things we really want to help students out there with is being able to focus on a well-balanced diet. And so you'll see in our dining hall, we try to provide students with a variety of different options. And so that way you can take care of your body that way. And as well, we will talk about this later on, but we have Wellness Fest coming up during the month of September, which will be an all-inclusive day for you to really find different activities to really focus on self-care as well. So that's great.
Thank you.
And so let's go ahead on, and you already did talk about daily routines like sleeping and just your water intake and just everyday things that people can do to focus more on self-care. But in addition to that, it's important to note that self-care can go beyond the physical luxuries that we talk about a lot of times, but it can also include changing behaviors, patterns, boundaries, or relationships in your life. And so how can one go about cultivating the best possible relationships around them to truly maximize their overall well-being?
Okay. So firstly, I would say go on ahead and treat yourself. It is not a bad thing to spoil yourself every now and then, whether it's indulging in a favorite, iced beverage, like a, pumpkin spice latte since it's the spring. I mean, since it's the fall. I'm sorry.
I love those.
Me too.
Yes, pumpkin spice latte. It's pumpkin season. Additionally, finding out what makes you happy. Not what makes your friends happy, not what makes your parents or your significant other happy, what makes you happy. Surrounding yourself with positive people. A lot of times we become like who we hang out with. If we're hanging out with negative people, we're going to become negative. So we want to hang out with people who are positive. And then also looking at removing ourselves from toxic situations. Are there areas of your life that you need to look at putting boundaries up? Are there people that maybe you don't need to be as close to?
Those are all great points, and one thing about self-care, it goes beyond just physical, and one thing that I have realized that you really want to have people in your life that truly pour into you, pour into making you happy and developing. And if, you find that you have relationships in your life that might be sources of stress for you or just might cause you overall unhappiness, those are something you might need to reconsider as well. So definitely, again, those are great points. Thank you for that, Melanie.
Thank you.
And just to add, Brianna, too, we want to bust some myths about stress as well. Sometimes we think we mentioned earlier, it is not selfish, but we also think about self-care being all about those luxurious activities, getting your nails done and getting your hair done, or purchasing some expensive items. It could be very simple as taking a few minutes to sit in your chair, 15-20 minutes to do some deep breathing, or taking a nice long shower or bath, or making your favorite cookies, or making a favorite meal. So it doesn't have to cost anything at all. It could be free of charge. It could mean walking, taking a walk through nature. So whatever it is that boosts your energy, that's what self-care is. And the other thing I want to say too is, when we talk about self-care, we think about it in terms of it's just a female-oriented task. It's open to men too. Men need to take care of themselves as well. So it's just not things that we do, but it's a human being thing. We all need to take that time to reflect and recharge.
Love that you said that. And that's actually something that we discussed on another episode of Chef Talk. This idea surrounding that, this is not just for women. Men are as important, and you're supposed to take care of your mental health just as much as anyone else. And so we definitely have different discussions about breaking the stigma surrounding that, breaking the stigma around therapy, especially for men. And so if you haven't already, definitely check that out as well, because that's definitely an important conversation to have as well. Also, one thing you pointed out too is just to mention that the idea that it can be simple things. A lot of us have smartphones now, so there are a lot of tools and apps that you can download to help you stay on track with your self-care, from tracking your sleep, to receiving affirmations to your phone every day, to tracking your exercise and getting in your movement. That's another great way, a simple way that you can stay on track with your self-care on a daily basis.
Absolutely.
And so also I wanted to ask, well, this kind of touched on it a little bit as well, but consistency is key when it comes to your self-care journey. And so how can students remain positive to reap the long-term benefits that come along with self-care practices?
Okay, so the very first thing we want to do is we want to set a goal. We want to identify what is it that we want, and we start putting realistic benchmarks in place to reach that goal. And that's going to be really important with creating that consistency. So for a person who's struggling to set a goal, but wants their overall objective to be healthier and have more energy, they've got to figure out what is the motive, what is the reason why I want to achieve that objective. And we call this finding your why, and having that why is really important. There's no wrong or right answer. It's whatever is correct for you.
I love that. And also what you said as far as setting small goals, one of the big things too is, celebrating the small wins. Maybe you're not always consistent, and, it takes a little while for you to get into a routine that works for you. But you can take each moment of every day to just celebrate the small wins, whether that's going to sleep at a decent time, whether that's treating yourself and doing something that you enjoy, or just finding something. And one thing that I've learned too, just personally, is to possibly dedicating one thing a day, or giving yourself one thing a day to look forward to. So whether that's going out and treating yourself to a meal that you like, or spending time with friends, family, whatever self-care looks like for you, just identifying one thing each day that you can do to just give yourself a little sense of joy and peace is really important as well.
Mm-hmm. And then the other things that we could do is letting go of self-doubt. We are our own worst enemies, and we get in our own heads about if we're good enough or if someone likes me. And so taking the time to erase all of that out of your brain, and then just being active in your own consciousness and say, I am good enough. I can do this. I'm going to get rid of these negative thoughts and put in your own affirmations, and let yourself know that I'm worthy, I'm capable, because we have enough to deal with in our outside world. Then we have to fight the battle in our heads. And so we need to be really kind and gentle to ourselves, and just know that we can do it.
I love that. That's great. And one thing that's great for that too is journaling. That's something that I've personally taken up, just being sure to write down different affirmations, goals each and every day, or as often as you can, just to reiterate, like you said, to be able to build that self-confidence and overall self-love that we're looking to achieve. So that's really great. Melanie?
Oh, no, I was going to say, also building a routine helps with that consistency. We call it habit stacking, and that helps us to enhance our consistency. When we're trying to incorporate a new habit, the more we kind of like build that into the routine, the easier it is to keep it going.
Definitely, that's awesome. That's definitely a lot of great tips here. And again, these are just small things that you can implement in your everyday life to really make all the difference later down the line. And so moving forward as we continue to grow, so beyond self-care practices, in what other ways can students work towards becoming the best version of themselves?
So earlier I mentioned that wellness wheel that incorporates spiritual, physical, mental, emotional well-being. And one of the areas that is not on the wellness wheel, but it is academics. So if a student is struggling in their academics, it's okay to get tutoring. So engage in a tutoring activity, consult with someone that's more experienced than you in that subject area. Have a peer support group. Be strict with your boundaries. So you have a paper due tomorrow and you can't go hang out with your friends today, because guess what happens if you go out with your friends and you don't get your paper due? Then you're gonna be stressed, and then it's just gonna be a cycle of, I should have not going out with my friends and should have worked on my paper. And then attend professional development activities to help bolster whatever you are already studying as a student, and just add to your wealth of knowledge that you're gaining not only from your faculty and as a student here, but from outside sources.
That's great. And time management definitely plays a big
Yes.
in self-care. I've learned, the more that you can manage your time and manage the tasks, maybe the tasks that you might not enjoy too much doing, especially if you can learn to manage that and still give yourself time to relax and, other things outside of the stressors that you might have in your life, that's definitely something to help as well. So that's really great.
From a physical perspective, we need to make sure that we're taking our lunch breaks. I think so often we, are like, no, let me just work through it. It's important to recognize that time for self-care, maybe getting out and going for a walk, walking around campus, or just getting out of your chair, walking around your office, doing a little bit of stretching, and using your time off, whether it's between classes, or if it's if you're working and you get some time off, take all of that time off, use it.
Yeah, and definitely be intentional with your time. That can make the difference when trying to have a balanced life. So those are all great tips, ladies. And so one thing I wanted to talk about too, while I have you both on, is the resources that are available for students on campus. So what resources are available for students struggling with self-acceptance or just need mental health support on campus? And so I know with you being at UMES, you have different resources available. So I just wanted you ladies to talk about that briefly for any students, and then encourage students to check with their own campus and find those resources as well.
I think Dr. Johnson is going to talk about the resources that are available on UMES's campuses, but for just for overall, one of the things that I would suggest is developing your own self-care plan. There's a lot of templates online, or you can even create your own. Make sure that you have it filled in with activities that you enjoy and that support your well-being. Keeping this plan, actually doing a written plan and keeping it somewhere where it's visible for you to be able to see every day. If you're comfortable and you have people that are close to you in your support network, you can share it with your support network so they can help with accountability. And then, making sure that for yourself, you're sticking to these activities and going back and reassessing over time. Did it work over this month? Did it work over 3 months? Did it work over 6 months?
No, that's great. And that's the thing I want to emphasize too, starting out, especially if you haven't really considered self-care before, starting out, you might find yourself frustrated that you might not be seeing the results that you're looking for right away. So it's important that, like Melanie mentioned, to really give yourself time and understand that it's a slow process. And so even though at the moment it might not seem like it, might help or be as effective as you would like, over time, you'll be able to look back and really see how much you've progressed as a person just by taking those moments to really focus in on yourself a little more.
And the other things that you could do as well, very practical things that a student could do is creating a daily schedule. So those old to-do lists that we used to write out works, but now we have technology and we can put that right at our fingertips in our phone. I'm old school, so I still like to write things out, and then I have my Google Calendar. But also schedule some regular time to be with your loved ones, your family members. My family is in North Carolina, so I don't get to see them often, but we FaceTime each other every night. So take that time, you're away from home, especially our freshmen, and that transition period might be difficult. Call your family, do a FaceTime chat, and then prioritize the things that you need to do. Oftentimes, students come in and they have 5 classes, 6 classes, and every class has a project due. And so choose what needs to happen first. What do you need to do first? And that goes back to your to-do list and being organized about your tasks. And then if you're too busy, learn how to say no. It is okay to say no. You're taking care of yourself. It's not being selfish. That's part of good self-care.
That is great. Definitely prioritizing learning how to take care of what you can today, take it one day at a time too, and really try not to stress yourself out that way, especially being a student. I know that can be tough. So definitely learning to prioritize, set boundaries in your life, it helps as well. And so Dr. Johnson, I know you wanted to touch on some of the resources available at UMES. So I'll let you go ahead and do that.
Yeah, so first, any student at any university could go to a counseling center. Typically, you can find them on their website. They may be out there doing outreach. But for UMES, we do have a counseling center. It's located in what we call the Student Development Center on the 2nd floor, Suite 2260. And our goal here is to normalize getting help when you need it. We want to crush the neck of stigma, and we don't want anyone to suffer in silence. So our message to our students is nothing is too small to discuss or talk about. If you need something someone to listen to any concerns you have, don't wait until you get in crisis. Come see us. We're here. We're non-judgmental. Our services are private and confidential, and all of our staff are licensed clinicians. As well as there's no charge. Our services are included in the student's fee, so you do not have to have an insurance card, check or cash or anything. Just come right in, make an appointment, and we're here to serve you. Really, really think about, ways that we can, I had to cut that, Brianna. Think about, consider us when you need help. Again, we would not want to see you suffering in silence. So, or you can reach us on our website. We're UMES at UMES Counseling Services. Where you can find us on Twitter, or you can contact us by phone at 410-651-6449.
That was great. So thank you, Dr. Johnson, for that. And again, to any of the viewers out there who are students at UMES, definitely visit the website for more information and resources that are available to you. And again, to any of the other students out there that are watching who are in need of support, definitely go to your own school and check out the different resources that are available. We want you guys to have the most successful school year possible. And that, of course, starts with your mind and your body. And so, again, we want to thank both of our guests today for being on, Melanie and Dr. Johnson. You provided some really great insight and tips for students to take with them. And even if you're not a student, these are tips that you can implement into your everyday life to just take care of your overall well-being, which is super, super important. And so to all of our viewers out there, I want to thank you all for watching this episode of Chef Talk. If you haven't already, be sure to like and subscribe to our THTV YouTube channel to stay up to date on everything that's happening in campus dining. And so that's been another episode of Chef Talk. We'll see you next time.